We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Is that going to
The Horn of Africa, one of the most important strategic locations in the world. Control the area and you control the Red Sea, critical for global trade connecting Europe, Africa, the Middle East and Asia. Two arch rivals in the region, Eritrea and Ethiopia, long-running border disputes ever since Eritrea broke free from Ethiopia in 1991, threaten the stability of the area. Their animosity frequently spilling over into neighbouring states like Somalia and Kenya. No Ethiopian leader has held talks with the Eritrean president, Isaias Afwerki, since the end of their bitter border war in 2000, when at least 70,000 people died. Until now.
If you ask me, do you want to go to Asmara and sit down and negotiate with Isaias Afwerki? Then I say yes.
Today on Talk to Al Jazeera, the new Ethiopian Prime Minister, Hailemariam Desalegn, who's only been in office 3 months, tells us how he wants to move his country and the region forward. Minister, thank you very much for talking to us on
My pleasure.
Talk to Al Jazeera. Tell us about the transition. You've only been in power for several months now. How's it going?
The transition has been very smooth, and it will continue to be smooth as well. But also given the history of the country, where there has not been any peaceful transition before, 20 years ago, and somebody can suspect that the transition might have some ups and downs.
What about the ethnic divides? What sort of impact does that have on governance?
Actually, the issue of diversity, not only ethnic, but also religious diversity and geographic diversity, like the agroecological issues, and as well as sex diversity, all these diversities has been properly addressed in our constitution. And our practice also tells that the last 20 years, or after 15 years after the constitution, this process has been implemented in place. And our people are very satisfied with the system where, the diversity which has never been addressed, which has been the source of conflict in the country, has been properly addressed. So that is not the main challenge. For us, the main challenge is now poverty, fighting poverty, which is the source of all kinds of conflict, whether you have ethnic tension or whatever. But we feel that our worst enemy is poverty, and if you fight poverty, I think our constitution has properly addressed ethnic issues, ethnic diversity, and our federal democratic system has also addressed those issues.
Before we talk about poverty, let's talk about ethnic issues. You say that you seem to be on top of handling it, but not everybody agrees with that. You've got big problems in the country regarding the Muslims, the ongoing demonstrations, thousands of people sitting in jail. What's going on there? Many of them say that they are very unhappy with the imposition of Habash Islam on the population. They say that it's an aggressive re-indoctrination campaign, that it's an aggressive act.
I think that's the voice of the minority. It's not the voice of the majority. The majority of Muslims, their question was to have a governance system, their own governance system. And government has nothing to do with their religious governance system. We have a secular government, and we say that our constitution also gives you, the government has nothing to do with religious groups, and therefore it's up to...
But you've imposed this law.
No, there is no imposition of law. Simply because we continue on with our secular government structure in place, because this is a country with diverse religion. We have Christians 43%, Muslims 35%, and
yes, and
Jews.
You've been very successful in handling that until now, but clearly there is a growing problem. Shouldn't it be addressed successfully? Otherwise it could lead to great problems within the country and also regionally.
No, I think the handling is still proper because there are some extreme groups in all regions, not only in Muslims, but all religions. They think that in Ethiopia they can bring a state which is led by a religion, like a Muslim state or a Christian state. That's not possible because we have to accommodate each other. You know, the tradition of accommodation in our country and religion was very, very nice and very good. And we have to continue with that. And the government has to stay aside as secular as possible. And we are not the ones, as a government, telling them to follow this doctrine or that doctrine. It's up to the religious group themselves. So I think that has to be very clear in everybody's mind.
You talked about poverty. Obviously, that's an enormous problem in your country. About 5 million people suffering from poverty and starvation in your country. We've been talking about this since 1984, and yet those numbers haven't been reduced. Why have you not been able to tackle this issue?
If you come to the numbers, you know, Ethiopia is now 90 million. You are talking in 1984 about something like 25 million people. So the number increased from 25 to 90 is huge, while the number which is still under the poverty, which is getting food assistance, is still remaining less and less. That shows that there is huge progress taking place. You know,
and yet people are fleeing the country, many of them going to Yemen.
I think it is. This has not to be related only to food security and all sort of issues. There is an employment problem. That unemployment problem is everywhere in Africa and even in many other countries. So youth seeking for employment, they go to some other country. That is natural. But the issue is this government addressing properly the issue of unemployment of youth in the country? That's not political. It's only economic issue. And
your predecessor, excuse me, jumping in here, was accused of often using aid to those who need it as a political tool in order to repress the opposition. Is this a policy that you're going to try and change?
No, there has not been such a policy earlier as well, because you shouldn't take only one side of the report. You know, what did the donor assistance group has reported? They have checked it, and they say there is nothing in Ethiopia which the aid is used for political purpose. And those who were advocating, like the Human Rights Watch, who reported, as you have said now, they even didn't take the donor assistance group's report, which says that Ethiopia has never used aid for political reason, political repression. And every citizen in Ethiopia is eligible for any kind of aid that comes, like food aid or whatever. Or
but political repression is rife in the country. I mean, you are in a position now where you could have the opportunity, the remit, to change that. You've got political opposition, thousands of them languishing in jails. Is this something that you are going to try and confront?
That's not true. There are no political opposition that are languishing in prison, number one. And there are no other political activists that are languishing in place. We are very clear in our mind and our policy that anyone who trespasses the law of the land, whether he's a politician or is within government, is under the law. It's below the rule of law. So the rule of law has to work in the country.
Rule of law, isn't it?
Yeah. And therefore, I think this is one-sided report which you are telling to me. There are groups who are reporting these kind of issues, but the reality, the truth is that on the ground, the country is surrounded by many terrorist groups, you know, and those terrorist groups has networks in the country, and we want to secure our people. First of all, as elected government, we have the responsibility to secure our people from terrorist groups. And anyone who has connection with these terrorist groups elsewhere in the world, as governments do, the Ethiopian government also brings them to the court, to the rule of law, to the due process of law, and they will be sentenced according to their...
Because the government is accused of using the fight against the Ogaden rebels, for example, as a means of repressing those that they feel the need to repress.
That's not the reality on the ground. It's the people of Ogaden themselves that are fighting against the Ogaden rebel groups, because that is not a legitimate question they are asking. And our constitution has already addressed the question that the Ogaden Liberation Front is doing. Now these people, they are making living out of it. They are making profit out of this kind of activities. So they continue on with their, making life and profit and getting, income out of the process. You know, we recently has started negotiation with this Ogaden Liberation
Yes, why
Front.
but they collapsed. Why is that?
It's because they didn't want to accept the constitution of the land. If they feel that they are Ethiopians, they have to accept the constitution of the land. That's the only basis for our negotiation.
Yes, but it was quite clear before those talks started that no preconditions would be acceptable, and yet, knowing how important this issue is to the Horn of Africa's security, you still went in with these preconditions.
No, this is not a precondition. For a country, a constitution cannot be a precondition for anyone. If you feel that you are Ethiopian, you have to abide to the constitution. That is the law of the land. That's not a precondition. The first thing is you have to accept that this is the law of the land. Then below the constitution, which both parties, we cannot change it because this is the Ethiopian people who decided and make the constitution. So below that, we can negotiate on all other issues.
But clearly, if that's an issue for the Ogaden rebels, what are you going to do now to kickstart those talks?
I think there are some other groups, they are very much fragmented. They are not one unity. And some other groups are also trying to come back saying that we have to abide to the constitution and continue on with the negotiation. We'll see what's going to on it. One of the factions has discussed with the government, negotiated with the government, is now is inside the country and now living their normal life. The other faction is the one which we are now being negotiating. Is also fragmented, and you have to deal with all of them. But anyway, for us.
But would you go back in without preconditions this time? At least
no,
sit at the table with a blank slate and start again?
Constitution is not a precondition. We say that
so no talks then?
Yeah. This is not a precondition because, in every country, if you go, everything should be under the constitution. And if you don't accept the constitution, there is no way you can negotiate because you cannot change the constitution. The constitution is the constitution of the people.
Many people say you should try and change the constitution when it comes to the governance of land. And if I can go back to poverty, you have a policy where you take land away from many of the poor and you hand it over to multinationals. It's called a land grab. It's directly linked to your food security problems.
It's not. Who are those who are saying a land grab? First of all, it's not a land grab. When you say land grab, it means that you are giving a land from the poor to somebody else.
But that's exactly what you do.
But that's not what we are doing. You cannot give a single person who can say that I have been given my land over to the rich or whatever, to the investor. This is a barren land. This is an open land, a savanna land, which there is no resident in the land, which is also productive, which can be given for production, and therefore increase our food production in the country. So I think there is no such kind of land grab in my country, because that we have been accused of that our land policy doesn't allow land to be sold. And now somebody is coming and saying that you are still grabbing the land, because in our policy there is no such kind of land selling. It's only a lease for a certain period of time.
Yes, because the government owns all the land, but
yes.
If you leave that land, you take it back.
Yes, sure.
So you are
there is nothing
accused
called
of
land grab.
Forcing the relocation of indigenous people.
No, that's not true.
Which apparently has led to people going to towns, increased the starvation.
No, I think genuinely speaking, there is no such kind of thing which has happened for giving land to investors, be it local or foreign. So the truth is that has also been checked by a diplomatic community in the country, whether any farmer or pastoralist has been snatched its land from, for the purpose of this giving land for commercial farming. But that is not true. That has not happened, and they have proved it. Therefore, I think these are some kind of talks by some groups who wants to repress us to take their own policy on some issues. But we said Ethiopia has its own domestic indigenous policy, and we will pursue with it, because our policy has yielded the result. And we have been growing for the last 9 years in double-digit growth, around annually 11%.
Yes, you have been
yes,
successful.
Yes.
Can I take this out to a broader perspective, the regional issues? Let's talk about what's happening in Somalia. What is your position on the establishment of Jubaland, the administration of Kismayu? Because I know that there's a stalemate between those in Jubaland and the government in Mogadishu. How has that been broken? What are your views on that?
First of all, the most important thing is now in Somalia we see hope at the end of this process and the light at the end of the tunnel. This is a remarkable achievement by the region and by the regional forces acting, working together with the Somali government. The issue of Jubaland is not a complex issue. And by the way, the Somalis should take the lead. It is the Somali government who should lead the process.
Are you concerned that Kenya is aligning themselves with some clans in Kismayu?
I don't think so. There is no one or this or that clan. We have as IGAD. IGAD is a regional institution which encompasses Ethiopia, Kenya, Sudan, Uganda, Djibouti, and Somalia itself. So in IGAD, we have put in place clearly that the process should be inclusive. And it should include all the ethnic and also tribes in Somalia. Actually, there are no ethnic groups, there's only one. And so all the tribes, all the clans has to be included in the process. So Kenya also embraces this IGAD's position. So there is nothing that you can accuse this country or that country siding to this clan or that clan.
So you feel it's on track?
Recently we have discussed with the president he was in Ethiopia, and I have had a bilateral with him. And we agreed that all the clans has to be included. That is the position of Kenya as well. So there are misgivings, and that has to be sorted out. We agreed that we have to sit down and talk in a clear manner, in a transparent manner, and the leadership of the process has to be taken by the Somali government and the Somali president himself.
Okay. I'm intrigued about your country's secrecy about this dam that you're building, which apparently is going to be completed in 2015, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. I mean, this is a dam that's going to have incredible environmental impact, political impact. Apparently it's going to squeeze the amount of water that Egypt and Sudan reaches. Why the secrecy?
By the way, I think you are lacking information in this regard. There is no secrecy.
Tell me.
There is an international panel of experts, which Ethiopia has taken as a lead to establish this panel of experts, where two Egyptian experts, two Sudanese experts, two Ethiopian experts, and 4 international experts from elsewhere. These are 10 people who are studying the impact of the dam on the downstream countries. And until now, they have made, I think, 5 meetings, and it has been cordial, and it has been very smoothly going.
So Egypt and Sudan are quite happy about this, the impact that it's likely to have on their countries?
I think the result we'll see later on after the study is completed. But until now, all the 5 meetings were cordial, and they have been satisfied with the meetings, and it continues on. And hopefully, and technically as well, this dam has a benefit to both Sudan and Egypt. And it has no, in any project you have little impacts here and there, but
this is a massive impact.
the major one, the major benefit is to both Sudan and Egypt. So therefore, this has not been established as a truth. And first of all, it's not secret. It's an open project, which all the countries of downstream
they
as
all
well
support.
as outside.
Regionally, this is met with great support.
You should have followed the press conferences that the governments of Sudan and Egypt are giving at this time, before saying that this is a secrecy and all kinds of things.
Because we are hearing to the contrary, and I'm just wondering what you make of this report, that Egypt has reached an agreement with Sudan to build an airbase on its territory as a launch pad for potential attacks on your dams. Is there any truth in that?
They have equivocally rejected that this is a false statement, and it has come from WikiLeaks and whatever, which is not the position of the Egyptian government. And they have clearly written to us that this is not the position of Egypt, that's not the position of Sudan, and they have nothing to do with this kind of agreements. It's just a say which wants to distract the smooth relationship between the 3 countries. So I think you have to understand this is not true, And that's what we have got from the two countries' leadership.
Okay, I'm going to throw a bit of sport into politics now. I know that you have asked for a neutral venue when you play with what's been called for so many years your arch rivals, Eritrea, in the African Nations Championship qualifier. Are you concerned that this could lead to further friction between your countries?
You mean football?
The fact that you're trying to get it away from Eritrea means
No.
you're slightly worried about playing.
We can
there.
play in Asmara. There is no problem with us with Eritreans as far as this kind of connection is concerned.
But you're asking for it not to be played in the country,
Which country?
in Eritrea.
No, I have no information of such kind. But if you ask me, do you want to go to Asmara and sit down and negotiate with Isaias Afwerki? Then I say yes.
Really?
I will do.
Because most of the animosity was between your previous leader and Isaias Afwerki. I mean, do you think now that Meles Zenawi has gone that you have an opportunity to forge closer links between the two countries? Because economically, I should imagine it would be very powerful.
That's not true, because my predecessor, Excellency Meles Zenawi, has asked more than 50 times even to go to Asmara and to negotiate with Isaias Afwerki. It is the denial and the stubborn action that Isaias Afwerki has taken. He has never been responsive to all the requests we made. You can ask the major people who try to mediate this process, and for all of them, late Prime Minister Meles told them he is ready to go anywhere.
But there has been incredible personal animosity between the two. Do you think now that you are in power, you will be able to push this forward? I know that Qatar is trying to get you two to sit at the same table.
I think
Are we likely to see that happen?
No one can prove that there is a personal animosity. No one.
There was.
No one can prove that. There has never been. It's only a policy issue.
Okay, but are we likely to see you sitting at the same table anytime soon?
Sure. We have pledged this to many of our friends. That we have, the most important thing for us is fighting poverty. The most important thing for us is having a regional integration, economic integration and infrastructure integration, so that we will be better off in competing in the global setting. And a smaller country you are, you cannot compete in the global market. So the larger you are, the interconnected you are, you can have interstate trade and investment as well as global trade and investment.
And I should imagine that the US would support closer ties between the two of you.
Well, we want to see any country. I mean, we have no differentiation, who this or that. Any country who can contribute to this process, we are ready. But most of all, if we do that, it will be much more productive.
You have possibly until 2015. What would you like to be able to do in the time that you have in power? And I'm sure you would like it to extend it even further. What are your aims and ambitions? What would you like to see your legacy?
By the way, as a country, we have a vision. After 15 years, we'll reach a middle-income country with a green growth path. So this vision, we have already set in place as a ruling party, as a government, as a people that has been embraced by our people. So my duty is therefore how to reach this vision and goal, and we have a number of issues that has to be addressed. The first and foremost thing is we have to continue on to build a vibrant private sector in the country. And you know that human development and human capacity is the major issue that leads to this kind of vision to be materialized. So in such a way that our universities and our technical and vocational training centers should produce entrepreneurs and very active people who engage themselves in the production process. So we want to focus on the productive sector, and our agriculture has to be modernized. It's in the process of modernizing, but industry has to grow much more faster than agriculture. So in that manner, we need to streamline all those issues to reach our goal. Without industrialization, you cannot have a middle income in the short period as we expecting it to happen. So I think I do not want to have my personal legacy. What I want to have is to have a people who is, extricated from poverty within this given period of time. So it's up to the people, up to somebody else to say that this is your legacy to continue on. I don't want to work for my own legacy. What I want is to see that my people has come out of poverty as quick as possible.
Prime Minister, thank you very much for talking to us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks a lot. Thank you.